all three Republican candidates on the campaign trail are claiming that polling is on their side. Take a listen.
We have better poll numbers now than we've ever had.
In every one of those head-to-head polls against Biden, I defeat Biden by double digits.
To win the Republican nomination, you've got to appeal to core Republicans and conservative voters, and she just does not. I mean, when 43% of her support in a poll said they would vote for Biden in the general election.
So which one of them is right? Let's go to the source. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. He joins us now. Hi, Anthony. How you doing?
Hey there, Nancy. I am well. I love it when I hear people talking about polls.
I know, because that is your specialty and you are the expert. So let's dive into the results from last night. Donald Trump, of course, won all but one county in Iowa. It was a blowout. You've now had about 24 hours to dig into the results. What is standing out to you?
So here is a picture. This is the map. All the counties but one, as you said, and all but for one vote in Johnson here. Look, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, there's two for this, which is big win. And you don't get to a big win, Nancy, without convincing voters not just to vote for you, but of your positions. And take a look at this. People who not just want a candidate who fought for them, these are groups that supported Donald Trump, but this one really stood out to me, that think Joe Biden didn't win legitimately in 2020, which 2/3 of this electorate did. That tells you again the fact that these voters have bought the narrative, that they feel like something was taken away from them and their candidate. And also this, Nancy, that so many said that they were part of the MAGA movement and then, perhaps not surprisingly, voted for Donald Trump. And it's that MAGA base that's been undergirding his support and that was so important again. And this time, it's not just a poll. This time, it's actual voting that's come out and shown support for him, Nancy.
And in that voting, Anthony, he won with just about every key demographic in Iowa: men, women, young, old, college educated, non-college educated. And what I thought was so fascinating was the way you broke it down so you can see just how much his standing has improved in Iowa with some key groups since 2016, his first caucus. Walk us through that and what that means for Trump going forward.
So here's a chart illustrating exactly what you're talking about. Look at these jumps from voters, among voters with no college degree. I'm going to come back to this because it's so important in a minute. Very conservative. He picked up a lot of the 2016 Ted Cruz vote, those white evangelicals that were so important. But then the economy voters, and this is important, they thought the economy is the most important because in all our polling, Donald Trump kind of spans portions of the party. For folks who care about the economy, for folks who want a tax cut, they're for Donald Trump, but also more of these folks who feel like they're part of a movement, feel like they're part of the MAGA movement, who feel like Joe Biden didn't win. They're all in these groups as well, especially the no college degree voters. And that's going to be important. I'll show you the map in a second, because it's the no college degree voters who are even more likely, by about 2 or 3 times, to say they buy Trump's narrative that Joe Biden didn't win, Nancy.
So let's look ahead now to New Hampshire then. You've got Nikki Haley saying this is a 2-person race.
Yeah.
Who actually has the polling edge there?
So I'm going to show you 2 quick things. One is these counties in yellow are the ones where Nikki Haley did better than Ron DeSantis. They do have more college degree holding voters in them. And that's one data point that might say, okay, Nikki Haley might have an edge or a chance going forward into New Hampshire, where you're going to find more moderate Republicans, you're going to find more college degree holding Republicans. But then I'm going to show you this, which is compared to Iowa, this is from our polling, there's a lot fewer voters in New Hampshire who call themselves part of the MAGA movement. Maybe that's an opportunity for Nikki Haley. The sum of this all is, we were early a few weeks ago to show that Nikki Haley was gaining on Donald Trump, coming closer to him in New Hampshire. Subsequent polling had her gaining a little bit more, even closer. I think the question going forward is, one, what happens with the MAGA base in New Hampshire? Do they underpin Donald Trump's support? And then number 2, can Nikki Haley then convince folks like independents, folks like, moderate Republicans, et cetera, to convince them that she is a Trump alternative in New Hampshire?
And the other case she's been making is that she is actually a stronger general election candidate against President Biden. What do the polls tell us about that?
Our polls, I'll just write it right here. Our polls have Nikki Haley +8 over Joe Biden in a national matchup. And that is a larger lead than Donald Trump has. He also has a lead. But what's interesting there, Nancy, is Nikki Haley has seen a rise nationally in perceptions of her electability. She's got relatively more Republicans who think she can beat Joe Biden, but she still really trails Donald Trump on that measure. So maybe they'll read our polls, maybe they'll see that, maybe that'll change, right? We hope so, at least from an information standpoint. But that's going to be key, because once you move away from the MAGA base of Donald Trump, people start making that calculus of, okay, how do they beat Joe Biden? And that maybe could be an opportunity for Nikki Haley. We'll see what kind of argument she makes in the next few days.
Well, they should read our polls if they're smart, because you are the authority. Anthony Salvanto, thanks so much for breaking it all down for us.
Thank you.
And from one authority to another, John Dickerson, who is a CBS News senior political analyst and host of Prime Time with John Dickerson. He joins us now in Washington. Hi, John.
Hello, Nancy. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you. Thanks for coming down. You have been watching all of this unfold for the past 24 hours. Obviously, Iowa does not have a perfect record of predicting who the ultimate nominee will be, but that doesn't mean that there still isn't a lot to be gleaned from what happened last night. What stands out to you?
Iowa, on the Republican side, has a pretty terrible record of picking the nominee, actually. It's usually a place that either candidacies go to die or they get the false hope of a Ted Cruz or a Mike Huckabee. But I think what's to be gleaned last night is that Donald Trump, there was a period after 2022 when Trump had lost the popular vote and lost the presidency in 2020. Then his candidates didn't do very well in 2022. People were saying, that's it. Finally, the Republican Party's washed their hands of Donald Trump. In that interim period, Republicans learned more about what Donald Trump did to try to overthrow the election. He did more things to make himself objectionable in the kind of traditional way we might think about politics, and yet he won by 30 points. He won across all those demographic groups. He's got endorsements rolling in. And in a way, it is more his party than ever before because of what he has now asked members of Congress who are supporting him to stomach and what they are saying, which is basically, January 6th wasn't as big a deal as we might once have said. If you look at the way people have evolved, Chuck Grassley, 7-term senator from Iowa, said after January 6th, 2021, he said, Donald Trump can't be the leader of our party. Well, Grassley was endorsed by Trump in his Senate race and is now, on board. So given where Donald Trump came from, his ability to dominate two other strong candidates, I mean, DeSantis and Haley are strong candidates, to dominate them and to also put together an organization. In 2016, Trump had a pretty shambolic presidential campaign, particularly in Iowa. And to be able to do the work you need to do and to execute is also something that's a big deal for a candidate who is a lot of talk, but it was always a question of whether he had an organization behind him.
What's so interesting to me is that you can look at these results in Iowa two ways. You could say this was a landslide for Trump. He won all but one county in Iowa. His next closest competitor was 30 points behind. On the other hand, you could say he won just 51% of the vote. He is, for all intents and purposes, the incumbent on the Republican side. And yet, if President Biden were to win just 51% of the vote in a Democratic primary at this point, the party would be saying that's a disaster.
Yeah. Well, Bush, I think, got 53% in New Hampshire in 1992 against Pat Buchanan, and that was an earthquake, right? So kind of what you're saying. But think about where Donald Trump came from in his reputation after he had lost and then where he is now. Think of the way in which he calls the tune in his party. So he may be king of a small hill, which is to say he may have changed the Republican Party. What we don't know, I still think it's unknown that whether the turnout was low because it was cold, which it certainly was, or whether Donald Trump has created a new party that is older, more male, less college educated,
and
believes more lies, but is smaller.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then it's a big deal, but only in a small way, because it means in a general election context, he won't be able to do well outside of that small group that he's created. That's one of the questions we don't yet have the answer to.
And so now we go to New Hampshire, where the tent does get a little bigger because independents can vote. Is New Hampshire make or break for Ron DeSantis, or for anyone?
I think it is for Haley more than DeSantis. DeSantis isn't. Iowa was make or break for DeSantis. I was getting a very Michelle Bachmann feeling with DeSantis. Bachmann put all her chips on Iowa and won the Iowa Ames straw poll, which used to be a big deal, and cratered when in her campaign. Same with Lamar Alexander in 2000. Same with Phil Gramm. And DeSantis put a lot of chips on Iowa, and the electorate there should have matched up with him. So he's not going to, New Hampshire's not a state for him. Once we get to South Carolina, if he doesn't participate in New Hampshire, 1,000 things could have changed by then. So I think DeSantis is in a wobbly place. Haley's in a wobbly place in part because she's just not yet taking on Donald Trump. She would like us all to think it's a two-person race. I would also like to think I'm 35 and have more hair than I have. But just because you say it doesn't make it so. However, if she really says it's a two-person race, we know what a two-person race looks like and how she behaves in that, because she treated DeSantis like that in the last debate. And she was very tough, called him a liar, said he was thin-skinned, questioned his temperament, went after him. If it's really a two-person race with Donald Trump, you would think Nikki Haley, who watched him up close, right? She is a character witness. She can say, I saw how he behaved in the White House and he is unfit. I asked her twice this morning on CBS Mornings, do you think he's unfit to be president? She would not say yes. She said some things, I don't think we should have him, but it was a shilly-shallying answer,
right,
which she cannot afford, it doesn't seem to me, if it is really a two-person race and if she just lost by 30 points in Iowa and wants to make a big noise in New Hampshire. We saw with Hillary Clinton attacking Barack Obama, with Donald Trump attacking Ted Cruz in 2016. After a candidate loses to somebody in Iowa, they usually come out, really strong. In New Hampshire so far, Nikki Haley hasn't done that. I don't see how she necessarily improves things in the way she needs to without taking on the person she says is the only other person in the race, Donald Trump.
Right. Clearly, she's concerned that if she does, she's going to lose conservative voters.
Exactly. I'm sorry, I was being slightly naive. Of course, the problem is that when she makes a character attack on Donald Trump, Republican voters see it not as an attack, but as a compliment to him. So that has always been the kind of Chinese finger puzzle for the Republican candidates, which they can't attack the candidate or it gets them in trouble with the voters they need.